Hello and welcome to the Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman, and today I am doing a different type of show. Today, I'm doing a different episode for the podcast. I am doing something that I feel like I'll be doing actually probably every month going forward now, and it's called the Movie Roundup Reviews. Basically, what has happened, as a lot of you who are following movies know, there's way too many movies coming out each month. I mean, just straight up with streaming, with movies still being released theatrically, with just all the abundance of ways to watch a movie now. There's so many movies that are released that come out every month that it's kind of impossible to do a single review for all of them, especially right now where it's the end of December. I'm doing my movie roundup for the year. I'm trying to make my best of lists, my worst of list, all that. I'm trying to, rank who are my favorite actors of this year, who gave the best performances, best directors, all of that. And with that, it's just so hard to actually keep putting out reviews when I'm watching so many movies. This week alone, since Christmas Day on, which today is the 29th, I've watched, I think, 18 movies in the span of like 5 days. And that was me being slow for a few of those days. I didn't really get to watch a movie yesterday. I didn't get to watch much on Tuesday. I watched 6 movies on Christmas Day. I watched like another 4 on Monday. I've already watched 2 today. I'm watching a lot of movies to try to catch up and get my list fully solidified. With that also said, that also means there's been a bunch of movies that I want to talk about, but don't have enough time to dedicate for each review, or maybe even in some of these movies that I'm going to be talking about, there's not a lot for me to say. So what I decided is let's just do this movie roundup. Let's do this December roundup, as I call it. Let's talk about some movies that I've seen this month, if I'd recommend them, if I wouldn't, and go on from there. And like I said, this is probably going to be a recurring segment on my podcast for the next year for sure. Because with so many movies coming out to streaming, it kind of becomes an essential that I need to do something very similar to this. So with that said, that's going to be the episode today. I'll be also talking about some movie news, just some of my thoughts on the award season so far, and we're going to get into that. So with that all said, I think let's just kickstart the show. So my name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse, and let's get rolling. All right, so let's just talk about, let's get the easier stuff out of the way. Let's break down some movie news and let's talk about the Oscar season so far. This has been a pretty non-interesting one, I think, for the Oscars going into 2023. I think the race is interesting itself in the sense that I don't know who's going to win, but I think the nominations are really obvious this year. I think the contenders have been very clear for a while. There hasn't been shakeups. In Best Actress, you have Cate Blanchett, you have Michelle Yeoh. It seems like you'll probably have Margot Robbie, Danielle Deadwyler, Viola Davis is a chance to get nominated. You have Michelle Williams from The Fabelmans. Those all seem like they have been the names for a while now. Same with other categories. You have Best Actor, which Best Actor actually has a little bit of shakeoff because Hugh Jackman is seemingly out of the race with The Sun, with the poor reception of The Sun. But I mean, it's still Brendan Fraser. It's still Austin Butler. Those are still the names that are Colin Farrell. Those are still the 3 big names. How that rounds up, it's a little unsure at this moment, but the race in that form is solidified. It seems like Best Picture is largely, these have been the nominations. This is going to be a pretty seemingly heavy year for sequels, which is pretty rare for the Oscars. This is going to be a year where I think easily you're going to see nominations from Top Gun Maverick for Best Picture, Avatar The Way of Water for Best Picture, and then there's still some rumors. Could you get possibly a Black Panther Wakanda Forever? At this point, I'm saying no. Could you get a Glass Onion? I'm also going to say no. But you have those movies that are in contention, which seems a little shocking at this moment. And you also have other movies in contention that this is one of the few years where you can legitimately say you have a bunch of movies that have been seen by the masses. Elvis is seemingly, by all accounts, going to get a nomination for Best Picture. That was a huge box office sensation. That will be big for the industry. That will be big for the Oscars. People have seen that movie. They've responded to that movie. The box office was there for that movie. Top Gun Maverick, same thing. Avatar: The Way of Water. If you get other films like if you get other films like Black Panther or Glass Onion in there, all that is doing is making sure that people have actually seen those movies and invest in those movies. Even like The Woman King, if that gets nominated, then that's not a $5 million box office. That did gross close to 100 million. There is certainly going to be numbers in there, and that's good for the Academy Awards overall. One of the big things that has been kind of the hitting point, the punching bag of the Academy Awards for basically since The Dark Knight doesn't get a nomination and on. The idea of expanding it from 5 movies to 10 movies, you get more movies like The Dark Knight to get nominated. And it hasn't really panned out that way. You've gone a lot more indies celebrated, which is great. I'm never going to criticize an indie drama getting in, but for the Academy Awards to really thrive, they definitely need nominations that are more popular in scale and mass. And that's also the question. What does the Academy want to do? Do they want to be an Academy that rewards films like Avatar, like Top Gun Maverick, even Elvis, films like that, films that have a bigger scale, bigger audience, bigger draw? Or do they still want to be kind of what the Oscars has been and really going for the artistry of movies? In some ways, that can be a very much a summation of their idea, and in many years that's not true. They have kind of notably gone it wrong for a handful of years, where the movies that you think should win, or that kind of what seems like the universal movies that everyone agrees is probably the best film that year, doesn't win, and you get like a film like The King's Speech winning, or you get a film like Crash winning. So that's the weird thing with these awards. You don't exactly know where they're going to go. I think this is going to be a strong year for them. I think there's going to be a lot of big nominations. I think there's going to be nominations that get people excited, like a Tom Cruise getting Best Actor for Top Gun Maverick, like a James Cameron getting a nomination for Avatar: The Way of Water, even like something that's a little bit more smaller scale, like a Viola Davis getting it for The Woman King, or Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio getting it. Like, Pinocchio is going to be a well-seen animated film from this year. That is all good stuff for the Academy, and it looks like this has been like I said, a pretty standard release for the Academies. This feels like movies that we know are going to get nominated for the Academy Awards, and it feels solidified. Like, I would say out currently on my list, I feel good about 7 to 8 of them getting the nomination pretty easily. It's those last 2 spots, what actually happens with them. Can an international picture sneak in there somewhere? Does a film like Bardo or Decision to Leave or even RRR stand a chance in these races? That's what's going to be left to see, and that's where the intrigue is going to really come. And I will see that more as more nominations come in, whether it's from the Guild Awards like SAGs, which is the Actors Guild body, or if we get the Writers Guild Academy their nominations, we'll see that all. But yeah, so that's how the race is shaping out right now. I've had some questions about why I haven't talked about the Golden Globe nominations. The truth is, I just don't care. I don't particularly care about who the Golden Globes are. I mean, they're a body of 78, I believe, foreign journalists who they've been riddled with scandals for the past few years. They've always kind of been a joke organization. Like, I'm not saying that a Golden Globe is worthless, but a Golden Globe is worthless. The only thing that it really does for a campaign is if someone like Keho Kwan wins for Everything Everywhere All at Once and he gives a great speech, you might see more of that. You might see more of just like, oh, well, he gives a great speech, like, we're going to keep nominating, he'll keep winning. It's going to be more of that narrative idea of it, and it's just like, oh, people are going to really get invigorated on the win. But in reality, like I said, the Golden Globes, they're irrelevant, they're dumb, they're just terrible organization and seemingly filled with bad people. I mean, their president, I believe, was the one who sexually harassed Brendan Fraser. So, like I said, this is the organization we're dealing with. So I just don't want to cover them. I think they're a waste of time. I think they're just, like I said, they've been terrible people, and I just have no interest in really spending time on it for the show. Now, when we're talking about it, when I'm doing my power rankings, is it going to be inevitable that I talk about them? It is. I will eventually just have to start talking about it in a more larger way on this show, and we're going to get into that as 2023 rolls around. But at this moment, I don't really have to do it. What else do I want to talk about before we get into our movie reviews? One thing that I really did want to mention is, in case you haven't heard at this moment, right now, I am reviewing the movies you tell me to review next year. So, I mean, obviously, I'm going to do 2023 releases. That is, I'm going to be doing that. I am a film critic. That is what I do. But I'm going to go even further than that. I'm going to be opening it up for you. DM me a movie, shoot me a tweet, email me, whatever you want to do, and just let me know, hey, Ben, I want you to review this movie. And what I'll do is I'm going to have a hat. I'm going to have all the entries in that hat, and I'll just be pulling one a week. And I'll just review it on the channel, just like that. Any movie is eligible. I've already had hundreds of suggestions thrown out at me. So I'm getting that all organized, and that's going to be a big series coming out in 2023. So I'm very excited for that. So like I said, if you want me to review a movie, let me know which movie you want me to review, and I will put it in the list to review. And I have a lot more coming for 2023. I'm doing some stuff with Criterion reviews that I'm very excited for. I have schedules set for a handful of reviews to come out. I'm trying to get more engaged on social media, and I'm also trying to write a lot more. So just with all that said, keep an eye out for me in 2023. I've got a lot of big stuff that I really have planned. I've been really just happy with the growth of this channel, so thank you all for that. If just to take a moment, if you're liking this video or you've liked my videos, please take a moment to just like and subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. With that all said, I think it's just time to jump into the December movie roundup. So I'm going to jump over to that segment right now. All right, so December roundup reviews. Let's talk about it. I have, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 reviews that I want to get to today. So I just have 8 reviews. I've done this format before. They're going to be rapidly quick fire on this. I'm not going to spend a ton on each movie. I will focus on some more than others. And we're just going to review them, and I'll just do it like a normal review. And then for the actual, my YouTube channel, I'll be clipping these reviews. So if you don't want to watch every review I have, and you just want to watch my review of Senior, I'll clip it out for you. That way you can just watch that review. But with that said, let's start with the movie Senior, which, if you guys don't know what the movie Senior is, it is a movie about Robert Downey Sr., who is the father of Robert Downey Jr. This is a documentary about the last few years of Robert Downey Sr.'s life. He is a underground filmmaker in the 60s, Senior is, and he is a guy just making experimental, making weird, making provocative, making irreverent comedies in New York with his family. And this is an exploration of not only Senior's career, but it's also an exploration of Junior's career. It's an exploration of how movie filmmaking has changed from the 60s to the 2000s. It is an exploration of family. It's explores life and death. And it's also just a movie about art and artistry. What I was so impressed with this movie is it's willing to be all of those movies, and yet it still feels coherent, and there's a real strong emotional tie in this movie. When they are exploring all of these ideas, the film breaks it up into certain sections. So I think you could really contend that the first third of the film, that is them getting the audience familiar with Robert Downey Sr. So if you don't know what the films he has made before, this is a kind of a brief 30-minute overview. These were the type of films he made. These were the messages. This was the civil rights era kind of infused in this filmmaking, tied with this Greenwich Village, 1960s New York, post-punk, just kind of atmosphere that just allowed for artists like Andy Warhol and for Robert Downey Sr., these types of just like so anti-commercialist artists, to find some form of commercial success. And it's really helpful for someone specifically like me who just doesn't have any real knowledge of Robert Downey Sr.'s filmography. I will admit, after watching this documentary, I did end up buying the Up All Night Criterion collection of, I believe it's 6 of Robert Downey Sr.'s films from his filmography, I should say. But you get to understand who he is as an artist. And also, that's a great, interesting point because you then also get to understand what influenced Robert Downey Jr. You get to see how a lot of the humor that Senior uses really carries on to the Junior persona that he kind of weaponized to his career heights. Like, you see where those two come from and where they exist and how Junior is influenced by Senior. And that's a great thing because you also just get to see the effect that the art has on the family. You know, this is a family that is all working together to make Senior's films. The wife is on set, she's an actress in the films. Junior has a small part in some of the Senior's films. You get to just see this family kind of grow up together. And with that, you also get to see the downturns of that. You get to see Junior get addicted to drugs really early on in his life because of just kind of the lack of parental vision that Senior has. And it's that dynamic between Junior and Senior that makes this documentary so interesting. There's this raw honesty between the two characters, and it's so much of this film is the unspoken. It's the truths that are said amongst these two that maybe are never said verbatim. They're never said aloud, but yet we're able to interpret what it means. Like when they just have a small talk about looking back at the 1970s or talking about drugs. You can just understand it's maybe some of it is Senior apologizing or Junior taking accountability or all of that. It's the silent understanding that you feel impacted throughout the film. Like I really felt the significance and the weight of that. And it makes for something, like I said, just so raw and honest. It's pretty shocking how brutal this film feels at times, where it is just truly two guys who have a lot of demons battling those demons kind of together on screen. And they do it in such different ways. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is by definition the ultimate showboat. I mean, he's such a strong personality, and Senior has that in him, but Senior is so non-traditional in the way he wields his persona. Junior, of course, is so public. He's had such a tabloid life, where Senior's definitely seems a lot more reserved. You know, he got to really just work in the underground film movement. So you get to see that different style infused within the documentary. So at some points when it's following the Robert Downey Jr. narrative of the documentary, you get to feel that more Robert Downey Jr. essence in it. You get to get the quick laughs. You get to get this snappy dialogue. You get to really, just like I said, feel the showmanship at work. And then when the Senior takes over, you feel that irreverent humor that he has in his early filmography. You feel that directorial approach, and you feel Senior kind of at some points having them point the camera, having the documentary crew point the camera in the way that he wants it to do. So it's almost Senior making a documentary within this documentary while Junior is also doing his project. So it gives for this thing where you have the documentary crew making their film, you have Robert Downey Jr. doing the documentary the way he wants to do it, and then you have Senior doing the film that he wants to do. And they're all kind of coexisting together. And it's just the editing of it all to come together and feel real and feel honest, and just to give an understanding of Junior and Senior in this narrative feature really works to some strong, strong highs in this movie. I found this film, like I said, pretty technically impressive. And this film is at its best, not when it focuses on the artistry or the lives of these people, but just truly when you strip it all down and it becomes a story about a father and a son as the father approaches his death. And it makes for this exploration about the confusion that is associated with death. It's this weirdness around it where you can feel Junior kind of getting more apprehensive as the film goes on, where there's a reality that is setting in that he is no longer going to have his father. And how does one person cope like that, especially when he hasn't had the perfect relationship with his father? So it's this aspect of making up for lost time, but also just coming to terms with something that you're not really ready to come to terms to. And it's the funniness of it. Like, there is so much of this film where Senior is just kind of cracking jokes about the fact that, like, he knows it's going to be over soon enough, and Junior kind of realizes it. And, you have Junior's kids in the movie as well. So it's also not only just the death of a parent for Junior, but for Junior's kids, it's the death of a grandparent, and how that looks, especially in this COVID setting where the documentary is shot during. And it adds so much emotional depth to this movie that's pretty just incredible, and it gives great insight into that. And it's not even like an artist trying to explain death. It is just trying to show, like, this is the reality of it, and we are people trying to make sense of something that feels kind of senseless, and we just wish that we could hold on to a feeling that is evaporating. And that's what this film is always doing. It's always kind of chasing something and chasing a moment that is always going to end. And it makes it just very profound. And like I said, overall, that's what really impressed me about this documentary. It's just so of its own. It is so personal, but it's also, if you view it larger, it is really just a story for anybody. It is truly just a story about life and death and family, about just art. And it's all of these things combined to just make something pretty beautiful and pretty outstanding. Senior is available on Netflix. Highly recommend it. Go check it out. It's probably the best documentary I've seen this year. It is currently flirting on my top 10 list. I don't know if it is on the top 10 list, but I can highly recommend Senior. I think this is a great film that you should check out. I am going the full 4 stars on this movie. As a documentary, this did everything that it needed to, and I'm going 4 out of 4 stars for Senior. Like I said, it's my favorite documentary of this year, and I can highly recommend it. And there's been some really good documentaries this year. I have a feeling you're going to be seeing this one in the best documentary race. I mean, this is always the category that is the most finicky at the Oscars. I mean, you had a few years ago where the films Won't You Be My Neighbor and Three Identical Strangers come out. Everyone assumes those are the front runners for the 2018 documentary race. They don't even get nominated in free solo wins. So, I mean, it just shows how finicky and weird this category is. So to guarantee that I think Senior will be in there is probably not a safe bet, but I think it will be in there. I think there's a lot to really just grapple with and just love about this documentary, and it is well worth your time. Jumping over to my next review, this is a movie that I was so lucky to receive from the Cohen Media Group. They sent me this film as a screener a few months ago. It was one of the ones where it just kind of fell through my radar. I had it. I had the Blu-ray sitting there to watch. I was trying to find time. I was really working on it, and I knew I was going to watch it before the end of the year. And then what really made me want to turn it on is I saw President Barack Obama, I should say, his best of the year movie list. And this film was on there. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I typically find that Obama, or Obama's social media manager, has very great taste in film. I've been wanting to see this movie. I've been saying I'm going to review this movie. I like the main actor in this movie. So it's time to sit down and watch The Good Boss starring Javier Bardem. And for those who do not know what The Good Boss is, which in fairness is probably a lot of you, this is a film out of Spain. This was officially released and was eligible for last year's Academy Award, where Parallel Mothers ends up taking its spot for the Spain nomination for the Academy Awards. But this is a film that, again, didn't really make it out to the US until this year. So for me, I am considering it a 2022 release. And The Good Boss stars Javier Bardem as that. He is the good boss, or quote unquote the good boss. He is a guy who runs this factory, and he wants to make sure everything goes right before this inspection that happens in a week. And to do that, he meddles in his co-workers' lives and oversteps boundaries to make sure that his way is enacted. And eventually it leads to him having conflict with multiple co-workers, and one co-worker in particular who learns to get the best of him and challenges him in a way that he has never experienced. The Good Boss is a workplace satire. It is a dark comedy, and it explores the abuses that rich people take to enact and achieve success at the expense of everyone around them. This is a film from Spain, but as Americans, you can definitely feel some traces of maybe some of the current landscape going on. When you watch this Javier Bardem character in action, there's a little bit of Trumpian to him. There's a little bit of Elon Musk. There's a little bit of Mark Zuckerberg. It's all these rich people who have stepped on the heads of those who have made them famous to prop themselves up. And in that case, this movie is very political and it's very stated of what the idea of people like that are. But it's also a lot more than that. This film, I think, is much broader than that. It doesn't have to be viewed in any way as an American context. It has just a understanding of just abuse in the workforce and how that can look like, and how it's so much manipulation to get one's way. And what The Good Boss impressed me a lot with was it's a very different critique of the workplace. When you hear the idea about a movie set in the workplace and there's this boss that's just terrible, your mind immediately goes to a few things. You either think that this guy is a drunk, he's a blatant abuser, he's a misogynist, he's an alcoholic, he's an a-hole, all types of things. That's not what this Javier Bardem character is. He is so much more subtler in his manipulation. Everything feels very low key, it's very channeled. A lot of it just feels swept under the rug. It's using power when power is needed. It is getting dirt on other people. It is using the information and the resources he has to make sure that his way and his will is enacted. The Good Boss is a film that is much more concerned about the systemic issues within the workforce, less about the boss himself. Now, the boss stands for a lot of things in this movie, but he is merely a kind of like small person in a sea of multiple hundreds of people doing this. This isn't like Javier Bardem's character is the ultimate billionaire boss. Like, he is just a local guy, seems seemingly rich, but he's not like the richest guy you've ever met. Like, he has definitely found a lot of success, but he's not by any means the top 1%. And that's what this film's interesting in. It's concerned much more about the nuance of this character. And getting an actor like Javier Bardem to play this type of character is done to the film's benefit. He works with the natural charisma that he just has and imbues as an actor. You can feel that menace that he has in other films like Skyfall or No Country for Old Men, but it's under this softer demeanor. So there's this kind of pull throughout the film where you feel like the charisma of Javier Bardem, you kind of want to root for this guy. He feels like a good guy. And then he's like kind of screwing everybody over. So he's always kind of pulling it at two ways. You're just like, you're charmed by him. And then when you're being charmed by him, he's screwing you over. He's screwing everybody. And that's where it works so well because Javier Bardem does that expertly. And it's this seemingly kindly demeanor in the body of a sociopath, or a wannabe sociopath, I should say. And the script is just delightfully clever, ranging from sharp workplace satire to dark comedy. It does those tonal shifts like that, just flip flop, no issue. It's able to just balance it all so well. And it's very funny. It is a very funny film throughout. And seeing that the boundaries of which Javier Bardem's character is willing to cross is very entertaining. And it's also just cringe. It is a cringe comedy in a lot of scenes. There's a scene involving one of his coworkers' wife that is played, one for comedic effect, but it's also just you're watching and you understand how bad this guy is overstepping his bounds and how he doesn't recognize it. He sees it truly as, well, if it is affecting my company, it is my concern and I am the boss and I need to deal with that. So you have this guy who is so egotistical that he doesn't understand the difference between professional and personal life. And it does it so brilliantly to explore this. And when the film becomes its best is when Bardem is matched with somebody very similar to him. There's a character in this film who is an intern character in this film within Javier Bardem's character's factory, and the actress is played by Almondo Amor. I do apologize for the pronunciation of that name. And she is kind of like, you get a sense like she is the next up and comer. She is going to be the person that will one day overthrow Javier Bardem. And there's kind of this recognition between the two. There's a moment where Javier Bardem realizes basically the threat that she presents and what she is going to do. And when those two start bickering or fighting or going at it, or you just kind of see who's manipulating who, did Amore's character know what Javier Bardem was always thinking and planning, and she was 2 steps ahead of him? It is truly this chess game going on throughout the film. And it, like I said, it works pretty wonderfully throughout. Now, I'm not going to say this movie is perfect. It does have its slow beats. It does have some very predictable comedy throughout. It does have a few moments in the film that are just so obvious from the beginning of the film that you know it has to be paid off at the end of the film. There's this character that is protesting Bardem's factory, and you know it's not just going to go unresolved, and there is a very clear resolution that is always going to happen, and it doesn't feel particularly shocking. So there is some impact lost in that. But the film does get also very dark and does take some turns in it that I wasn't fully prepared for. And as the film draws to its near conclusion, you get this sequence that I think is one of the best acted sequences of the year, where Javier Bardem is doing everything that he has done to succeed. And it's very akin to Scarface, The Godfather. And it's played with a very contemporary pop music song in the background that is very on the nose, but I found that needle drop to be very effective. And it really just showcases Bardem's cruelty. And in that case, so yes, while this film isn't always the sharpest, where this film does lack its nuance, it does so while still being entertaining. I found this film thoroughly entertaining from beginning to end. And I would highly recommend The Good Boss. I think it is a really clever social satire that is very much worth your time. It feels almost like a contemporary piece to Office Space. If Office Space is the 90s, this feels more 2020s in essence. All right, so let's talk about my next film, which I saw Christmas Day, maybe to my mistake. It is a film called Spoiler Alert. And for anyone who does not know what this film is about, this follows the real life reporter Michael Ausilio, who writes for the TV channel, the magazine, the TV channel back when it existed. I do not believe the TV channel magazine exists anymore. And this film, and the film Spoiler Alert, follows Ausilio's character falling in love, making this beautiful connection with his partner, only to learn that the partner has a cancer diagnosis and the cancer will kill him. And this film stars Jim Parsons from The Big Bang Theory, who plays Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory, Ben Aldridge as Ausilio's lover, and Sally Field as Ben Aldridge's character's mom. And this film is very conventional. I'm not going to lie with you. You've seen this film a handful of times. You know all the beats that this film is going to hit. This film is directed by the person who did the Big Sick, and it feels very similar to that in style. And by the title alone, which is very obviously ironic, you know what the notes of this film are going to be, and the film plays with that. And it's very straightforward romantic drama about cancer. But what I found so endearing about it was its just approach. It is very honest with itself. It is very much just like, you know what? This is how I felt. This is how I feel. This is how I want to portray those feelings. And this is how I want to best work through my grief in it. So in that case, this film is good. It is a film that is best highlighted when Ben Aldrin and Sally Field are on screen. It is best when it is exploring death, moving on. What the film struggles its hardest is just when it has this element where the character of Ausilio, he tries to explain basically his life through the way he understands it, which is a sitcom. That element does not work in this film. They cut to sitcom format a handful of times in this movie. And like I said, it never clicks. It feels jarring. And it didn't need to be in the film. I think had you just had it more be straightforward, conventional, like this film by nature needs to be and is, I think it would have worked best. This is an element that really feels like they were trying to give it some more cinematic quality, and it never particularly paid off for me. neither does Jim Parsons as Michael Ausilio. He's good in the film. The struggle is it's so hard to disassociate him as the character Sheldon Cooper, even in just the way he yells, the way he talks, everything about it. There's just something that feels off about the timing. I don't know. It's probably still my own personal bias because I think Jim Parsons is a good actor. It's just he's so closely associated with that character. And whenever they have this guy who plays a little bit neurotic, it does it to the disservice where you're like, oh, that's kind of just the character he plays on The Big Bang Theory. And that's where the film can struggle for me. But overall, it's a sweet film. It's worth checking out on VOD. It's like I said, you've seen this film before. It's not groundbreaking in any way, but if you like this type of film, if you like a good cry movie, this is what it is. And it has a sweet message about overcoming grief and the struggles that come with a cancer diagnosis. So for all that said, spoiler alert, is a good film. I'm giving it 3 out of 4 stars. All right, so with that said, let's jump over to my next review. And this was a film that was at one point flirting for the top 10. And then as the film went along, it really loses some momentum. I'm not going to actually put that in the video, though, because if I put that in the video, everyone will click off because they'll know my review of this film. This film is best described as a podcast Western. This is a movie where they take the format and feel and genre of the Western and instill it with 21st century sensibilities like podcasting. And it takes a famous actor from The Office. It allows him to direct, write, and star in this film, and allows him to kind of be a modern day Clint Eastwood to a degree, or if you wanted to go maybe a little bit further back and didn't want to fully buy into that, it allows him to be a modern day Robert Redford in All the President's Men with just a little bit of that Clint Eastwood swagger to him. And this film that I am talking about is the film Vengeance, which is directed, starring, and written by BJ Novak. And this film follows BJ Novak is a reporter for The New Yorker. He's this up-and-coming writer in New York. And one day he discovers that a woman that he had a booty call with has died in Texas. So he goes to travel to Texas under kind of a mistaken identity. The family believes him to be much closer with this woman than he actually is. And when there, it is revealed that the brother believes that his sister was killed, thus leading our protagonist to start a podcast, to start writing about this, and to capture this phenomenon. And as he sees it, he is trying to understand the people of Texas and why they would believe in conspiracy theories and why they would believe in this and what it says about America. Along the way, he discovers maybe not everything is as it looks. And this film stars BJ Novak and Ashton Kutcher, and a handful of other actresses and actors in this film, including Dove Cameron. And here's what I have to say about this movie. This film is a really strong directorial debut. I was pretty astounded by how relevant BJ Novak's interpretation of the 21st century is, specifically in the form of podcasting, how that aspect of news media is explored. I thought that was all pretty done excellently. I think there is a lot of clever satire in this film, a lot of clever writing, some very dark comedic moments that land expertly. And it's just like I said, it's a very impressive feature from BJ Novak to both direct and to write. Now, praising BJ Novak, then I also have to give it, he is kind of the main criticism I have for this film. He's just simply not right for the starring role in this. He doesn't have that star quality to him. He's the least interesting character on screen at all time, and he ends up becoming one of the more morally ambiguous characters, and the third act really relies on understanding who this character is in a payoff that doesn't necessarily connect in any meaningful way. So it is the struggle of this guy has it so reined in when he's writing and directing it, but as a star, he leaves a lot to be desired. Now, luckily, able to work off of him is Ashton Kutcher as the supporting role. He is this music manager in Texas. He is a guy who understands BJ Novak. He is a person who also, he's not from Texas. He moved there. He has this life. He has this understanding outside of it. And he's basically BJ Novak's character's guide through this small rural town of Texas. And Kutcher's so charismatic in this role. It's just the ultimate Kutcher performance. It's everything that you love from Kutcher, the comedic sensibilities, this charm, just all of it done to just a perfect just fit. He is so engaging to watch in this movie. He's such a screen presence and he's such a character in this film that's just fun to be with this guy. And he has a great chemistry with everyone in the film, specifically BJ Novak. And he is what really gets to elevate the film, specifically in the kind of the second act of the film, where he kind of states the thesis of it. As Ashton Kutcher's character understands it, these are all people with artistic integrity who live in Texas, who live in this small rural town, but they have no way to express it. They're all just, they're all stuck in their lives. This is who they are. This is what they've grown up in. This is all they know. And thus, when something bad happens in their lives, they turn to basically conspiracy theories, blaming immigrants, all this stuff, all this basically the world is against them. And his idea is if they have artistic sensibilities slash things that are introduced to them to expand their worldview, they will expand. And that's kind of the push and pull theme of this movie. And like I said, it works to a very good degree. Now, what Novak is also trying to accomplish in this film is he is making a modern day Western. The BJ Novak character in this film is, like I said, he's supposed to be a modern day kind of Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry slash a Robert Redford in All the President's Men. And it doesn't fully click. The Western motifs of this film are not particularly good. And that's just me fully being honest. They try to make him, like I said, this type of character, and it's just that BJ Novak does not have the gravitas for it. And as the film gets kookier and weirder, it really struggles to maintain its runtime and its kind of just identity. By the end of it, you're left wondering what exactly this film was trying to accomplish at the end. Its message becomes much more muddled. And like I said, it just doesn't work in any particular meaningful way. Now, the ride for the first time, I found it to be quite engaging, quite fun. I had a good time watching this movie, and it was just truly the more I thought about the movie is where it suffered. So it's one of those things where it's just like, first time I watch it, I bought into it. I bought into the mystery. I was on for this ride. And now where I know the conclusion of this film goes to and what happens in its final finale, it just doesn't work for me in any particular meaningful way. So it is the case of I see a lot of talent in BJ Novak. I see a lot of good in him. And I just, if he can rein in some of those sensibilities, if he can have a little bit of a tighter, more cohesive script, if he doesn't cast himself as the lead guy or specifically this type of lead guy, you can't give yourself the hero role to this degree that requires like a charisma that it's just not who he is as an actor. If he can tighten those things up, I see a really promising career from him. I think this is a good directorial debut, not a great one and not our best of this year. I think fans of BJ Novak, people who want to see what he has in his head, want to see kind of a similar style of comedy or at least outlandishness to The Office. I think there's going to be a lot to like. And I think there are going to be people who really connect with this movie. Like I said, it just at some point the film loses me and it never holds my attention overall. But certainly a good film to start off a career with. And it's seemingly a fairly positive career. And I think we'll be seeing more from DJ Novak. And I'm excited for that. Vengeance, I am giving 2.5 out of 4 stars. Every year we get a few movies that come out where it seems like the purpose of the film is to win the actor an Academy Award. And I don't want to degrade this film for that, but at large portions of this film, I really found myself wondering, why am I watching this film? What is this film actually trying to accomplish? And what's it doing? And at some point, I'm like, okay, what this film is and what it is doing best is it is a showcase for its main actors. But outside of it, it's not doing much else for me. And it's not a film that I have any particular desire to re explore or just give more to. But understanding what the film is, I understand the purpose of it, and it is a strong showcase of certain actors in it. And there is a lot of meaning and heart behind this film. And this film that I'm talking about is The Inspection. For those who have not heard of The Inspection, this film stars the actor Jeremy Pope. And Jeremy Pope plays a gay black man who decides to join the Marines. And this is his experience while in boot camp. This is based on a true life story. And what this film is about is this gay black man going through boot camp and basically being hazed and bullied to insane degrees. It is very brutal to watch. The hazing and bullying is so homophobic, so terrible, so just cruel that you're sitting there, and if you're like me, you're watching and I'm like, why am I watching this? Like, it's just so mean to watch. And like I said, it just, I understand that what it's showing to the audience, but I'm also left wondering, like, why am I sitting here giving this film the time of day, essentially? Like, I understand like that there is homophobia in the military. I understand that there is racism in the military, and especially during this era, right post 9/11, some of those feelings are maybe 100 times more intensified, and there's been some improvement, if you want to call it improvement, to that. So that's where I struggled with this film. I'm watching this film and I'm just like, I'm not having a pleasant time. I understand what the film is about. Why am I giving it my time to this film? And it ends up just being Jeremy Pope. That's why you watch this film, because he's magnificent in this role. He is so heartfelt. You feel every emotion that he has in this film, as it's a character just being cruelly treated for an hour and a half. And he has this relationship with his mom, played by Gabrielle Union. She is just an absolute mess in this film. She's so just she's so hard to watch in this film. She's so mean. She's just so cruel. She's just so rude to her gay son, and is not accepting who he is as a person. And like I said, it makes for some really tragic, heartbreaking moments throughout. And it does allow for the character of Jeremy Pope to really just go through the emotional turmoil of this film. And when he accomplishes what he needs to accomplish, because spoiler alert, based on the fact that, this is based on a true story, based on, I believe, the writer's own experience. So he's alive. Like, no, I don't, that's not a spoiler to by any means. That by the end of it, I understood what it was. I understood, like, this is what he had to get out. This is what he is saying is happening, and it is showcasing something. It's not done with any particular nuance. There is nothing in this film where it's like, basically, the director's strength is never subtlety in this film. It is very blatant in your face. Like, this is homophobic. This is racist. This is how they're treating him. Characters literally say, like, this is wrong throughout the film. And like I said, when you're watching it, it can really lose some nuance. But at the same time, I can't deny that it's emotionally powerful to watch this character overcome triumph. It is impossible to deny that there is an inspirational quality watching this character overcome adversity. And it does lead to some really strong emotional payoffs as he just discovers more about himself, as he pushes himself, as he works harder than everyone else there. And like I said, at that point, like, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, this is truly a showcase for this actor. And that's what this film is. And in that case, Jeremy Pope is a really strong actor. Outside of that, I can't really recommend this movie. It is just, like I said, it's just, the type of movie it is. It's very conventional in its approach to that. It doesn't have anything particularly new to say about the subject matter. So it is truly just like, you are going to sit through this movie and watch this man just be bullied. And if you're not on board with that, I get it. Like, it's not an easy watch. It is not a fun watch. I wouldn't particularly call it a rewarding watch, but it is an emotionally cathartic watch with a great performance in it that is very technically impressive, that is very heartfelt, and he's doing a lot. And it is just one of these things where I think we're going to look back in maybe 10 years and look at Pope as an actor and be like, oh yeah, he had the goods, like, from the beginning. Like, this is a film that showcases he is a talent. For all those things, I am giving The Inspection 2.5 out of 4 stars. I think it is a good movie. I think it is a great performance, though, and that's why you watch The Inspection. So, anyway, that is my review of The Inspection. Have you watched it? Did you see it in theaters? What did you think? I'm curious to see if Jeremy Pope gets a nomination for Best Actor. I think there's a really good chance that he could, and I think it'd be a quite deserving nomination if he did get it. Jumping over to my next review is another film that came out actually the same weekend as The Inspection. This is a I I I think if you've watched this channel this year, I think you have this impression that I hate Disney. Like I straight up dislike the films that they've made. I don't think they have much artistic merit to them. I think they are rushed. And like I said, if you've been watching this channel this year, I think you would really think I hate Disney. I love Disney. I love a lot of Disney's films. I love Disneyland. I'm a huge fan of the MCU. This year's been a little rough to be a fan of the MCU. I like a lot of their animated films. I like a lot of the studios that they have working under it. And it's just been the case that this year has just been a rough lineup for them. And that's just to say that this year has been a weird year for Disney. And Strange World is representation of a film that gets the best of Disney and the worst of Disney. So let's jump into this review of Strange World. For those who do not know this, one, I thought this trailer was brilliant. This was a trailer that very much promised like the 1930s radio. It had this big booming adventure of basically these true explorers discovering a brand new, as they call it, alien world or strange world in this case. This is a story of three generations of family. It is the grandfather, the father, and the son. The film starts off with the grandfather and father. They are going on this expedition together to find the new world. The grandfather gets lost in the new world. The father is able to escape. He comes out with this new energy that is able to basically just, the world that he lived in is now powered all by this energy. The father in this case is played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and he had a rough relationship with his grandfather, who is now lost in the strange world. He understands the greatness of him as a discoverer, but as a father, he finds that his father lacks a lot of fatherly qualities. And thus, when he has a son himself, he doesn't want to fall into those pitfalls. He wants to be a better dad than his dad was to him. And in that case, the emotional core of this film really works when it is the exploration of Jake Gyllenhaal's character trying to be a better dad. It really works wonders. And of course, if you've seen the trailer, it's very obvious. The grandfather is not dead. He comes back, and now you have these three generations of family going on this adventure in the strange world. This is a movie of two halves. And it is a movie of a half that I think is good and a movie of a half that is never bad, just not particularly interesting. And I'll start with the not interesting part because I think the strengths may outweigh the negative to large degrees. The negative of this film is I was never found myself in awe of this strange world, of this new world that we're exploring. I thought it looked very bland. I thought it just wasn't particularly interesting. There wasn't any cool design to it. There wasn't a lot of color. I found even just some of the animation to look fast, like just straight up, like it felt like interpretations, and they were taking certain like landscapes and they were just kind of drawing it quickly. And I didn't feel like the detail that I felt from previous Disney movies. So when we're in this new world for a majority of the film, I just wasn't particularly visually impressed with it, which is a huge bummer of this film because that's kind of what this film pitches itself as. It pitches itself as this exploration of this new world. And in that case, it never works in that degree. I also think some of the downsides of this film is what it is trying to accomplish. And that's largely, it's trying to be the story about three generations all coming together, all learning to basically love and accept each other. The issue with it is Gyllenhaal's the most interesting of those generations. And then the father, his father, Gyllenhaal's father in this movie, played by Dennis Quaid, I just don't think is particularly interesting in this film. I don't think this character is particularly fleshed out. I never bought this relationship when these two characters eventually have to talk about what's happened in their lives. I just didn't find it particularly emotionally impactful, which that's a struggle for this movie when it is so based on family dynamic and an emotional family dynamic, and the emotions fall completely flat to me. That's a big downfall of this movie. Now, there has been a lot of talk about Strange World's representation of the LGBTQ community. For those who are not aware, the son, Gyllenhaal's son in this movie, is gay in this film, and it has been the talking point. I dare utter his name, but Shapiro uh, kind of went on this whole rant around it back in November when this movie came out. This film flopped at the box office, and I think people were unfairly placing the blame on LGBTQ cast and characters and just that exploration and the fact that it is an interracial couple. They saw it as this film being political in nature, or if you want to use the words Ben Shapiro uses, woke in nature. I I think it's a pretty false argument of what this film is. I will just say straight up, the romance in this film is actually pretty tender. It feels very real. It feels very true to the age that this character would be in. The interracial stuff, if you're bothered by that, I mean, you're just bothered by interracial marriage. So F off. Literally don't care. Like, if you're bothered by it, you're bothered by it, but fuck off. I literally just, you don't deserve an opinion or really a voice at this table. Like, I'm not going to engage that one in any particular meaningful way. So, like I said, there's been this, I think, negative buzz on this movie, even if you weren't agreeing with anything Shapiro said. There was just so much buzz on this movie for it just being a huge underperformer, for not having anything integral to say. And it's an issue that I am not blaming on the filmmaker's side. It is the creative aspect of Disney that I believe is at fault for this movie. And by that, I just mean Strange World is a movie that just feels rushed. So in every aspect, it kind of feels like some of the characters are underdeveloped, some of the romance is underdeveloped, some of the dialogue between all the characters and just learning about each other. You don't feel like you have a good grasp on this world. And thus, so you're watching it, and I can understand some frustration with it because it does feel like they put things in this movie to put it within this movie, and yet it doesn't have any true payoff. But then Disney advertises itself like, oh, this is the first film about a gay character within the animation world. That is technically true, but I didn't feel like you guys gave enough to really explore that in any meaningful way. And it feels like you were banking off the LGBTQ's acceptance of this film. And to some degree, I feel that pandering nature of it in this film. Again, intentional or not intentional, I understand why some people would see this and just think, oh, this film is just trying to be about us and about our lives, but it's only caring about that for the bottom line, for the money, for them to get to have the headlines and just be like, we get to pat ourselves on the back. Disney made a gay character. Yay. Like, I do understand that criticism. Again, I think it's a little bit of a non-starter because the romance aspect of the film didn't bother me, but it is also significantly underdeveloped. It has a sweet moment that pays off with Dennis Quaid and the grandson talking about romance and their first crush. And those moments are sweet, but again, it's just one of the things where it's just like, it's so undercooked, and it's like, that's one of the few moments that we get of it, that emotional aspect of it doesn't work. And that's the overall issue with this movie. It's just the emotional payoff of this film doesn't work. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. I'm watching the film and it's just like, the exploration part of the film is boring. The action of this film is boring. It doesn't look particularly interesting. The animation is never interesting. The character arcs are pretty surface level. You have these interesting enough characters who are brought into this world, but they're then giving nothing to do in it. I don't see anyone really just being taken over or just like swept away by Strange World, which is disappointing because like I said, that first trailer is incredible. I think it's an all-timer trailer. It really got me excited for the film, and it just ended up being a film that I never found bad. I never found particularly good is the issue. I just found it somewhere straight in the middle, average, with some good things in it. I think Gyllenhaal is good in this role. It's just that ultimately nothing pays off in any meaningful way, and it doesn't do anything to advance Disney in any way. It doesn't do anything to bring their future brighter or to introduce any new interesting characters. I think it is the case that Strange World is a movie that will just be forgotten in 5 years. I don't see anyone talking about this film now, and I just don't see it having a critical reappraisal in a few years. So, like I said, some aspects of this movie I like. A lot of them I didn't even mind. It was just straight up nothing wowed me, but nothing also really particularly disappointed me. So I'm kind of just stuck straight in the middle. I'm giving it a 2 out of 4 stars, a movie that I just simply found serviceable at best and boring at worst. I have 2 more reviews to do. Neither of them I'm going to go into great depth on. I am doing every movie that I saw in 2022 ranked, but I just wanted to give you some quick thoughts on both these movies. I saw After Yang this morning. And for those who do not know what After Yang is about, it is a science fiction drama. It stars Colin Farrell, and Colin Farrell is a man with a family who they adopt basically this AI technology that serves as a pseudo brother for their adopted child. They have an adopted Chinese child, and they believe that adopting this AI named Yang will help get the daughter closer to her cultural roots, and that they'll develop and they'll grow and understand it, and they'll have this bond as brother and sister. It's basically, by that synopsis, you can guess that this movie is commentating on AI, on a growing reliance on AI, but also what makes somebody human. And when the AI starts malfunctioning and it becomes clear that the AI is going to die, it leads to this very much a film about life and what life is, what the meaning of it's an existential crisis basically happening throughout this film. And I found this film pretty riveting. Colin Farrell is excellent. He has to be the standout actor of 2022. I mean, he was in Banshees this year. He was the Penguin in the Batman. He's in After Yang, and he's in a movie called 13 Lives. All 4 of those movies I gave really positive reviews to, and specifically I singled out Colin Farrell in all of those reviews. I think he's very good. He's been making interesting projects. He does not take easy go friendly money movies. Like, he's not a family friendly director. He is not a family friendly actor in the sense that he is taking the widest appeal, biggest box office success movies. I mean, in some cases, like the Batman, he does, but he also really challenges himself. And in After Yang, it is very much a challenging film. This is a very chill film, though, also. Like, this is a very laid back kind of exploration of existence and what that means. And it's so beautiful. It's just, you get to just spend time with this character of Yang, the AI, get to see inside the inner turmoil of his life, get to understand who he is, the lives he lived, and does that make him human or not? And those experiences, and it's pretty impactful. There's times where we literally go into Yang's memory, and those are the heartfelt moments of this movie. And they work to such a strong degree. When this film is, like I said, exploring the existential crisis of its characters, it is riveting. And luckily for this film, that's largely what this film is about. This is a very slow burn. There are going to be people who are put off by just the tedious nature of this film. It very much leads to something by the end because, again, you have to understand who Yang is. You have to understand this life that he has lived and whether that is life, like whether we quantify that as life. And there's a great moment in the film where somebody asks Colin Farrell's character, he asked another AI, like, was this person, like, did Yang believe they were human? And the AI responds with essentially the response that you understand life and humanity only through the perspective of humans. Like, that is a flawed concept in its own. And it's these philosophical questions throughout the film that really just left me thinking. And that's a really cool thing to be experiencing when a film is challenging me in its script, in its direction, in its characterization. And it does it in a way that never feels emotionally manipulative. When you hear the premise, you're going into this child's, basically, this Yang is seemingly a 12-year-old boy. You're going through his memory and experiencing his life and understanding whether you believe him to be human or not, which the film never fully answers. You expect a little bit of emotional manipulation where you just get scenes where you are left heartbroken, and you are left heartbroken throughout these scenes, but it's because of the realness of this film and less about the question of humanity. While this film is about this existential crisis, in some ways it is just straight up like, this is life, and it doesn't matter if this Yang character is human, if it's AI, if it's nothing, if it's just these people getting to explore life together and live in it and exist in this like atmosphere and coexist with one another. And it's really beautiful in a lot of scenes. Now, like I said, it is very slow. Like, it is an hour and 35 minutes and it feels much longer. But I also just found myself transfixed by the screen. The cinematography and the score really just do a lot to just kind of lock you in on this runtime. And Colin Farrell has to do so much as the guy who serves as the audience. He's us. He is asking these same questions that the film is exploring. He is our eyes through this world. And in it, it just works pretty magnificently. I have to recommend After Yang. I think it's a very good film that is very small in scale, very laid back, very chill, very much not for everybody. But if you like it, I think you're going to. This is a After Yang is a very chill film. It's a very relaxed film. It's a very atmospheric film. It's a slow burn, but this film is going to have a strong audience. People are going to really respond to this. And if you're really into that, like AI philosophical music, if you're into a lot of the themes, this film most reminds me of Blade Runner. And if you're into those types of ideas, I think you're really going to respond to this film. I did. I have to recommend this film. I'm giving it 3 out of 4 stars for After Yang. Finally, we come to the end of this podcast, and my last review for the December movie roundup is a movie called Aftersun, which was released by A24. This film is directed and written by Charlotte Wells. This film, for those who have not heard about Aftersun, it was one of the big films to come out of the film festivals this year. It had a rapturous response at Toronto. And Aftersun follows a 11-year-old daughter and her father on vacation. What Aftersun is about is it is at a fading vacation resort, 11-year-old Sophie treasures rare time together with her loving and idealistic father, Calcum, played by Paul Mescal. As a world of adolescent creeps into view beyond her eyes, Callum struggles under the weight of life outside of fatherhood. 20 years later, Sophie's tender recollections of their last holiday becomes a powerful and heart-rending portrait of their relationship as she tries to reconcile the father she knew with the man she didn't, in Charlotte Wells' superb and searingly emotional debut film. That logline is straight from A24. And so Aftersun stars Paul Mescal and Frankie Carrillo. This is like I said, this was a huge rapturous hit out of the festivals. I got to see it Christmas Day. And I will just say that this movie has been playing well with audiences. People have been really blown away by the emotional tenderness of this film. They've been calling it profound. They've been calling it just this really just like jaw-dropping look at a family and that relationship. And I wanted to love this movie, and I'm like pretty like disappointed to say I didn't love this movie. I am not as high on this movie as a lot of my peers are. Aftersun really didn't work for me in any particular meaningful way. And the reason I struggled with Aftersun is I didn't buy into the emotion of this film. And that's largely due because I just didn't like how the script played out. It very much plays with the idea of time and jumping both from the past to the present. And then even in the past, it shifts time perspectives there from different days on the vacation. It's not linear in any way. And I just found myself really bored by this movie. I felt really dry, and I felt like I was trying to be made to cry. I really found this film to be pretty weaponizing of its emotional vulnerability. There were scenes that were so clearly designed to make me cry, But I just, like I said, and I'm an easy crier. I will cry at basically any movie that you give me. Like I'll tears all the way down, and this movie never got me close to that. And it's just, I like I said, it's just this failure of the film where I felt it trying, and I felt it felt like it was pandering, and I didn't appreciate that. The relationship between Callum and Sophie is tender for sure, but the issue with it is it's so slow in the film. It's presented in such a meticulous way that I couldn't get into it. I really just there was nothing for me to latch onto and buy with these characters or feel anything for these people. I think of the two, I actually think I know Paul Mescal has been getting much praise for his performance in Aftersun as the father. I think Frankie Corio actually has not been getting enough praise for her performance as the 11-year-old daughter. I think she's really good in this film. I think she really brings the parts of the emotion that do work for me in this film. I think it's really based on her and her relationship with her father in this film. Paul Mescal is good in this film. There wasn't, again, it's the same thing where it just like, I felt the acting in this film. Like I really felt him going for it in certain scenes. There's this scene that revolves around a bedroom that comes in kind of like the final, I think, like 20 minutes of this film, where I really, like I said, I felt the acting, and I know a lot of people have been praising this performance for its quietness. I was like kind of blown away by like how non-quiet I found the performance, where I found it to be very showy in certain sequences. And that's not to say that it's a showy performance all the time, but in certain scenes, it really just, like I said, I felt him going for it. It felt like an Oscar reel to me. Like it really did feel like that in certain scenes where I really felt the acting of the performance. And so it's weird that this film didn't hit me as much as it did. I understand why this film would hit people, especially if they've had experiences with depression, if they've lost parents, if they have a distant relationship with a parent. I totally understand why this film hits in some very meaningful ways. It just didn't work for me in that regards. And also I didn't like how the film looked. It is shot to look like it is, I believe, in the 1990s, like a video camera. So you're seeing a lot of it grainy. You're just seeing it's supposed to feel like a home vacation. And that does work to some degree, because to some degree, it does feel intimate. It does feel like I am watching something that I should not be watching, where I feel like a fly on the wall. And then at other times, though, the issue is it just doesn't, like, it's a 1990s video camera. Like, it just doesn't look particularly good. Like, it's just by design, a home video is not cinematic in quality because it's a home video. Like, it's not supposed to be cinematic. So I just found that to be a struggle in the actual style of this. I'm sure people are yelling and explaining why I'm wrong on this, and I totally understand it. It's always rough when you crap on a movie that people were sobbing and crying and just emotional over, and then you hear me just being like, no, this movie does nothing. It has no real emotional hold to me. And again, it's all the feeling of perspective and just understanding how you've lived your life and how you connect with it emotionally. If you connect with this film emotionally, I totally understand why you find this film emotionally devastating, why you find this film so raw and honest and just true and just powerful. I totally get it. Like, I understand why people love this movie. I'm just sad to report that I wasn't one of those people that love this movie. I thought the writing was at times very clunky, which, again, probably by design because it adds an authentic feel to it. But it's too much of vignettes in this film, where it's a film that really much relies on this scene going into this scene that isn't always connected, but it is always this idea they are on a vacation together. So there's no real narrative through line throughout a lot of aspects of this film. It's a 1.5 out of 4 stars for Aftersun. Sorry to say. Like I said, I might give this film another chance, but at this moment, this film did nothing for me. That's my review, and that's my show this week. Those are the 8 movies I watched. I largely good week. I haven't been blown away by anything this week that I've watched. I've watched some really good films. I haven't watched any 4-star films this week. Haven't watched any 3.5 stars. I am making that top 10 list. I have a lot of lists coming for you. I have my top 10 best films of 2022, top 10 worst films. I have a podcast that's coming up with a friend of mine where we're going to be talking about the best performances, the best directors, just all the basically Oscar categories. If we ourselves got to pick the categories, if we were the ones who got to vote, what we would vote for. So we have that coming up. I have a top 10 most anticipated video. I have a top 10 most anticipated movies of 2023 video coming out. So be on the lookout for that. Again, guys, thank you so much for your support. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman. Thank you all for watching this really long episode. Take care. Bye-bye.